So This is a big one if you're into environment. This is about as big as it gets, they tell me, and it's an honor to be here with a terrific person who's worked so hard on this and some other terrific people. Thank you very much. But I'm pleased to be joined today by EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who you all know, and to announce the single largest deregulatory action in American history. That's a big statement in American history, and I think we can add the words by far. Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. Prices went up incredibly for a worse product. This action will eliminate over $1.3 trillion of regulatory costs and help bring car prices tumbling down dramatically. You're going to get a better car. You're going to get a car that starts easier, a car that works better for a lot less money. In 2009, Barack Hussein Obama, his EPA designated fossil fuels such as oil, gas, and other things that actually make factories rock and roll and other things drive very nicely as a threat to health and human welfare, known as the endangerment finding. This determination had no basis, in fact, had none whatsoever, and it had no basis in law. On the contrary, over the generations, fossil fuels have saved millions of lives and lifted billions of people out of poverty and all over the world. And you see it with the blackouts all over where they don't use it, where they went to wind, intermittent wind, which is weak and ineffective and very, very costly, most costly energy there is. And people are dying because there was no air conditioning or there was no heating. Lots of other things, bad things happened. And yet this radical rule became the legal foundation for the Green New Scam, one of the greatest scams in history, probably as great, maybe even greater than Russia hoax, etc., which the Obama and Biden administration used to destroy countless jobs. And the jobs have been just decimated. Although they're all coming back because of tariffs, they're all coming back into our country at levels we've never seen before. But it raised prices and caused immense harm to the U.S. auto industry. We thought irreparable, but we've got them back. We're coming back now. I was in Detroit, as you know, with Ford, and they had one of the earliest plants from the early 1900s, and it was going to be closed down. And then when I won, they said, let's keep it open for a little while. Let's see what happens. And they just announced, as you know, they're going 24 hours around the clock with that same plant that was going to be closed because of what we've done. For example, under the endangerment finding, they forced the hated start-stop feature onto American consumers, which unnecessarily shuts off a car's engine when you stop at a red light. In other words, the engine goes off. That's great. The endangerment finding was also used to impose the massive and really very expensive electric vehicle mandate, expensive in the sense that nobody wanted it. Everybody was going to be forced to buy an electric car in a very short period of time, even though you can't power the car because we would have had to spend $5 trillion on power stations. That's all dead, gone, over. These crippling restrictions were a major factor in driving up car prices to unprecedented levels, and the car that you were getting was not nearly as good. In 4 years under the Biden administration, the price of a new and used car rose more than 22%, all to facilitate the Green New Scam without achieving any meaningful impact on the environment, but making the car worse. That is why, effective immediately, we are repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. This action will save American consumers trillions of dollars and will lower the average cost of a new vehicle by close to $3,000. Think of that. During my campaign, I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new regulation. And we've exceeded that. We've instead done it 10 regulations. We were able to cut 129. So now we cut 129. So think of that. I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new one, but we did more than 10. We did 129. It's something. Nobody can even believe it. So we did a lot of regulation cutting in the first administration, a record, nobody even close to it now. We're actually exceeding it in this administration. The biggest one yet that we've done is happening right now. So perhaps no industry has benefited more from our historic deregulation campaign than the U.S. auto industry. We canceled the EPA's absurd, just totally absurd, tailpipe emission standards, which was a disaster for automobile manufacturing, and revoked Biden's emissions waiver that would have allowed California to regulate automobiles for the entire nation. And they're crazy out in California. They have nothing but trouble out there, as you know. That's why people are leaving in record numbers. I also ended Joe Biden's extreme CAFE emission standards, saving the average American consumer much more than $1,000 when they buy a new car. But now we're talking about close to $3,000. These regulation cuts, combined with our tax cuts and tariffs, are the reason why the world's largest automakers have announced that they're going to be spending in excess of $100 billion in the United States in the next very short period of time, building new auto plants. We're bringing our auto plants, assembly plants, and factories roaring back to life, not even mentioning AI and all of the other things. We're building thousands of businesses in the United States. And if you remember, on my first day, they said if I could ever get the Dow up to 50,000 in my last year, in other words, in the fourth year, that it would be an unbelievable miracle. But don't worry about it, because it'll never happen, they said. And if I could get the S&P up to 7,000, they said in the fourth year, they said it will never happen. Let's not even talk about it. I have things. Let's not even waste our time talking about it. Well, at the very end of my first year, the Dow hit 50,000. Now it's over 50,000. And 3 days before that, the S&P hit 7,000. So we didn't have to wait till the end of the fourth year. We just waited till the end of the first year. We've never had a country in a position like this, and a lot of it's due to tariffs. And a lot of it's due to the fact that we had a great election, and a lot of good things have been done. One of the good things I did was put Lee Zeldin in charge of our environment. So I'm going to ask Lee to say a few words. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a big deal. Under President Trump's leadership today, the Trump EPA has finalized the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America. Referred to by some as the holy grail of federal regulatory overreach, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding is now eliminated. This action will save American taxpayers over $1.3 trillion. What that means is lower prices, more choices, and an end of heavy-handed climate policies. With today's announcement, American families will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. 16 years ago, an ideological crusade within the Obama administration set off the most costly regulatory power grab our country has ever experienced. The 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding led to trillions of dollars in regulations that strangled entire sectors of the United States economy, including the American auto industry. It claimed new powers over the vehicles we drive, even though the best reading of the Clean Air Act clearly states otherwise. The Obama and Biden administrations used it to steamroll into existence a left-wing wish list of costly climate policies, electric vehicle mandates, and other requirements that assaulted consumer choice and affordability. And who paid the biggest price? Hardworking families, small businesses, millions of Americans who just want a reliable, affordable car to get to work, take their kids to school, or go to church on Sunday. The endangerment finding and the regulations that were based on it didn't just regulate emissions. It regulated and targeted the American dream. And now the endangerment finding is hereby eliminated, as well as all greenhouse gas emission standards that followed. The red tape has been cut. Manufacturers will no longer be burdened by measuring, compiling, or reporting greenhouse gas emissions for vehicles and engines. And the forced transition to electric vehicles is eliminated. No longer will automakers be pressured to shift their fleets towards electric vehicles, vehicles that are still sitting unsold on dealer lots all across America. And as a cherry on top, we are ending the federal government's push to get manufacturers to install that Obama switch, the almost universally despised start-stop feature. There will be no more climate participation trophies awarded to manufacturers for making Americans' cars die at every red light and stop sign. It's over, done, finished. Under President Trump's leadership, vehicle manufacturers can once again build what Americans want, not what politicians and bureaucrats in Washington demand. President Trump campaigned on reviving the auto industry, and he continues to deliver win after win after win, ending electric vehicle mandates, getting rid of the Biden Cafe standards with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, and securing massive new U.S. manufacturing investments and all of the jobs that come with it. Affordable cars mean opportunity. That means jobs, healthcare, education, and mobility, especially for working families and rural Americans who rely on their vehicles every single day. And this isn't just about making the American economy boom. It's also about restoring the rule of law, a fundamental principle of our great republic. For years, unelected bureaucrats twisted the Clean Air Act into something it was never meant to be. The Obama administration twisted itself into some kind of mental pretzel to invoke authority it didn't have and to sidestep Congress. They claimed that 6 greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles, some of which aren't even emitted from vehicles and trucks, contribute some amount above zero to global climate change, what they said endangered public health. But their wild web of mental leaps isn't prescribed in federal statute. The Obama EPA's house of cards upended the best reading of the Clean Air Act, as well as 50 years of EPA precedent on what constitutes regulable air pollution. In the 16 years that intervened, the Supreme Court has established clear precedent in Loper Bright Enterprises and West Virginia versus EPA. And in light of these Supreme Court decisions and other developments, upon his swearing in last year, President Trump immediately tasked on day one submitting requirements, recommendations, research on the legality and continued applicability of the 2009 endangerment finding. And at Trump's speed, he wanted that research and recommendation turned around instantly. We looked at the Clean Air Act. We looked at what the highest court in the land had said, and we used a very simple metric. If Congress didn't authorize it, EPA shouldn't be doing it. Congress never voted for these climate mandates inside of Section 202 of the Clean Air Act. If Congress wants EPA to regulate the heck out of greenhouse gases emitted from motor vehicles, then Congress can clearly make that the law, which they haven't done for good reason. Today, we dismantle the tactics and legal gymnastics used by the Obama and Biden administrations to backdoor their ideological agendas on the American people. Following the plain language of the law, we have now realigned EPA's rulemaking to reflect the Clean Air Act exactly as it is written and as Congress intended, not as others might wish it to be. Where our predecessors focused on trying to make and please a few fear-mongering climate alarmists, the Trump EPA is making decisions to benefit all Americans based on common sense and reality. And the American people are tired of paying the price of political games. Last November, they voted for an administration that would listen to them. They told us that the price of a newer, safer vehicle was too high. They told us they didn't want cars that shut off at every red light. They told us dealers were sitting on lots filled with electric vehicles that nobody wanted or were buying. The Trump EPA listened. We heard you and we acted. And today's action does not change regulations on traditional air pollutants and air toxics. This EPA is committed to providing clean air for all Americans. Powering the Great American Comeback is based on the singular focus of providing clean air, land, and water for all Americans while harnessing the greatness of the American economy. That's a big difference from our predecessor. We believe that we can and must choose both. If you want an electric vehicle, buy one. If you want a diesel truck, then buy that. Powered vehicle or a hybrid, well, more power to you. That's what freedom and choice look like. We're restoring the rule of law, we're grounding policy in reality, we're giving power back to the American people. And we're bringing back the American dream stronger than ever before. EPA will never waver on its core mission of protecting human health and the environment, and this administration knows we can do that while ushering in the golden age of America. To recap, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding and all greenhouse gas emission standards on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles that followed is eliminated. American families now will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. Today, the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States, over $1.3 trillion, the elimination of the endangerment finding is signed, sealed, and delivered.
Thank you, Lee. That was long, but good. It was good. Maybe I should say great. It was great, and we appreciate it. Would you have anything to say, Russ? Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Literally no other president would have done this to get at the foundations of the Green New Deal, so tremendously excited that we are where we are today. Great work by Lee. I'm a little worried that this next year will be, EPA alone will be dereg east by the number of things that are going to come out of EPA. So great work to the team. $1.3 trillion in savings, massive historical opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Please. Would you like to speak? You're worthy of it. Good man.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is a historic day led by President Trump's leadership. No other president, as Russ said, would have undertaken this and at the speed we did. It was a great team effort. This is the model of the Trump administration, everyone working together, mission aligned.
And Lee is also working on cleaning up the horrible situation with regard to farm equipment. You could use John Deere as an example and other companies where tractors are unbelievably expensive and don't work as well because of all of the environmental nonsense that was put on them. Also excavators, any equipment like that, bulldozers, Caterpillar tractor would be a beneficiary, I guess, but the people are going to be a beneficiary because the equipment's going to be a lot less expensive, and it's going to also, most importantly, it's going to work much better. So we're working on that immediately as we speak. We'll probably make it so that any of that equipment built in the United States will not have to go through this. If it's built outside, I think we'll probably leave the standard the same. If people are going to send us equipment, let them have that standard for whatever it's worth, which is not much. And I think that's a very big announcement, too, and we're going to see if we can get that done very quickly so that all of that equipment that we have made, including lawnmowers, et cetera, you won't have to go to the finest schools in the world in order to figure out how to operate it. Okay? So any questions, please?
President Trump, thank you for this. And after this much-supported move to roll back the former EPA's endangerment finding, what additional steps do you plan on taking to scale back what many are calling climate industry scams? Specifically, and Secretary Zeldin knows about these wind turbines they're trying to bring to New York. Judges allowing them to be rebuilt right near your hometown in Jamaica, Queens. They're being called a national security threat for air traffic coming into the airport. What could you do to make sure these things don't
Well, we're
destroy
trying to
the
make sure it
environment?
doesn't happen, and basically stopped all windmills in this country. It's the most expensive energy you can get. They're all made in China, a little bit in Germany, but mostly in China. And we're putting them all over our fields and ruining the fields and killing the birds and all of this. And the environmentalists say they like them, but they really are a tremendous eyesore. They've ruined. Europe has gone, as you know, Europe isn't even recognizable anymore between immigration and because of, environmental things like the windmills, which are taking over. The people hate them. The energy is by far the most expensive. And we're fighting very hard to make sure that they don't get built. I hope we don't have one built during my administration. We inherited some contracts where they've gone down the line a little bit. We're trying to terminate them for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons, as you had mentioned, it's endangerment for the military. It's also endangerment for airliners. So we're trying to take care of those situations now. They should have never been allowed in the first place. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for taking
Sure.
questions. What do you tell Americans who are concerned that the $1.3 trillion in savings does come at a cost to public health and the environment based on science?
I tell them don't worry about it because it has nothing to do with public health. This was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. And let's say Obama started it and got it rolling. And a terrible ripoff. They'll have more money to spend for health care, if you look at it. Now they can go out and spend it on something that's meaningful. And nobody's doing more for health care than the Republican Party. And that starts with the fact that prescription drugs are going to be coming down at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. They're falling. We were paying the highest prices in the world by far, sometimes by 10 times more than other countries. Now we're going to be paying whatever the lowest price is anywhere in the world. We're going to be paying that. It's called favored nations, most favored nations. And I think it's the biggest thing to happen in this world, the world of medicine, prescription drugs, ever. There's never been anything like it. If like in my third year, first term, I actually got prices down 1/4 or 1/8%. And I was so proud of myself because they were like that for years and years. And since under Biden, they went up very, very substantially. And now they're coming down by, depending on, you could say 500, 600, 700%, depending on the way you want to, or you could say 80%. It doesn't matter. They're coming down by numbers that nobody ever thought possible. I got it all done, and I got it all approved, and all of the countries all over the world are going to pay more. They've agreed to pay more because of tariffs. I said, if you don't do it, we're going to have to tariff you, and they've all agreed to do it. Otherwise, they would have never done it. That was why no president has ever been able to get it done. Please.
Yeah, Mr. President, you took more than 600 deregulatory actions in your first year here. Coming from the business world, you know how unnecessary red tape can hinder business expansion, investment expansion. Given the magnitude of this announcement here today and the deregulatory action you took in your first year, how much economic growth can we expect to see as your term progresses?
It's a great question. I think that it'll be enormous. Who knows really what the number is, but I can tell you in terms of economic growth, we have $18 trillion being invested in this country right now, the most ever of any country by far, not even close. Think of it, no matter where, not just here. $18 trillion is coming in, and that money is being spent right now as we speak in new plants and equipments. And you may have heard Lee mention, I mentioned also, that over $100 billion is going to be spent in this very short period of time just by foreign auto companies on building auto plants in the United States. The greatest thing that ever happened to the United Auto Workers. The head man was not been nice to me, but now I understand he's saying this is the greatest auto president in history. But the auto workers gave me their vote, and they knew what I was doing, and they know what needed to be done. The tariffs saved them, but this is now taken it to a level that I think, Lee, that nobody ever thought even possible. They thought this was, nobody would have the courage to do it. We have to have the courage to do it because we're making America great again. This is a big factor in making our country great. If you look at some of these cars, they didn't even work. They had computers all over the place trying to save a half an ounce of fuel. We have fuel for the next 500 to 1,000 years under our feet, and they're trying like hell to save a half an ounce of fuel. The whole thing is just crazy. Please, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, is climate cooperation with China no longer in America's interest? And could you please confirm that you're going to visit China the first week of April?
Yeah, I'll be
What would you
visiting
like to
President Xi in April. Look forward to it. He's coming here later in the year, and I look very much forward to it. No, our relationship with China is very good right now, and this is, not relevant too much having to do with China, what we're announcing today. But no, my relationship with President Xi is very good. Yes.
Mr. President, following your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, has your thinking changed at all as it relates to these negotiations with Iran
we have
or
to
the
make a deal.
timeline with Iran?
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands. But it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly. Yeah.
Mr. President, we might be heading into a partial government shutdown. When was the last time you spoke with Chuck Schumer, and do you still feel Democrats are negotiating in good faith?
Well, a week ago I spoke, but, we have to protect our law enforcement. Actually, the Supreme Court gave a ruling, or one of the courts gave a very big ruling on masks, that you have the right to use them, for personal protection if you want. So I don't know how that interjects. They want our law enforcement to be totally vulnerable and put them in a lot of danger. They have some things that are really very, very hard to approve, frankly. As you know, it's only pretend. We had various of the other bills. That's all done, but we're left with this one. We have to protect our law enforcement. Very important. Please.
Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu want you to stop negotiating with Iran?
He is, you're saying stop entertaining, stop talking to them? Didn't say that. We didn't discuss that. I'll talk to them as long as I like, and we'll see if we can get a deal with them. And if we can't, we'll have to go to phase two. Phase two will be very tough for them. I'm not looking for that.
Mr. President, there are currently 0 Israeli hostages left in Gaza because of you. Thank you for that. And now that the war is ending in Gaza and Israel, I wanted to ask, do you believe Bibi bears any responsibility for the security failures that we saw on October 7th?
Well, October 7th was a rough time, and I guess everybody's responsible, which you to look. But it was a terrible attack. It was a sneak attack. It was as violent as unfortunately, I've seen some of the results at levels that probably even you, good reporter, but probably you haven't seen. It was a horrible thing that took place. People was surprised. It was a surprise attack. Nobody saw that coming. He didn't see it coming. Nobody else would have seen it coming if they were in his position, I don't believe. But I can tell you he's been a very good wartime prime minister. He's been very strong. We've worked with him very well. We had tremendous success with Iran and everything else we've done. And he really has been. He's been, extraordinary as far as a wartime prime minister. Not easy. And, you have a president that refuses to give him a pardon. I think that man should be ashamed of himself. A pardon over this trial that's going on. The president of Israel, the primary power he's got is the power to give pardons. And he's not, he said he's given it 5 different times, but he doesn't want to do it because I guess he loses his power. I think the people of Israel should really shame him. He's disgraceful for not giving it. He should give it. But Bibi's been a great wartime prime minister, and I've been the best friend to Israel I think that they've ever had. A lot of people say beyond presidents that they've ever had, and we will continue to be. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, voter ID polls very well nationally. Even the majority of Democrat voters want it.
Right.
So why do you think Senate Democrats are resisting the SAVE Act? And what is your strategy and realistic pathway to getting the SAVE Act passed to ensure free and fair elections for the next generation?
It's such a great question. I appreciate it, actually, because it's called the Save America Act. We've changed the name. It's the Save America Act, and the Democrats are against it. I heard one of them saying, we will stop the Save America Act. No, we're trying to save America. And it has to do with largely voting. And basically, it's got 3 very simple points. It's got voter ID, photo ID, but voter ID with a photo, right? It's got the confirmation of U.S. citizenship. You have to be a citizen. So you have a vote, you have an ID. That's about a 99% one, and I think 90% with Democrats. Then you have confirmation U.S. citizenship. That's about a 99% one with Republicans, about 86% with Democrats, except Democrat politicians because they cheat on elections. And then you have no mail-in ballots. And there would be no mail-in ballots, very important. You know, we're the only country in the world that does a system like we do. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in ballots. The way we do this is unbelievable. It guarantees cheating. So it's no mail-in ballots with the exception of disability, illness, military, or if you're traveling, you can get an exemption. You know, if you happen to be out of the country for a good reason, you can have an exemption. So with exceptions, it's no mail-in ballots, and that will assure the security of our crooked elections. We have crooked elections, yeah.
Mr. President, have you fired or disciplined that staffer who posted the video from your account that included the Obamas?
No, I haven't. That was a video on, as you know, voter fraud, and fairly long video, and they had a little piece and had to do with the Lion King. It's been very well, it's been shown all over the place long before that was posted. But that was a very strong, and I'm sure you saw it, a very strong piece on voter fraud, and the piece that you're talking about was all over the place many times, I believe for years. Yeah, please.
Visited Epstein's Island, and do you continue to have?
No, I wasn't aware of it. No, I didn't. I actually haven't spoken to him about it. I wasn't. But from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children. And I guess in some cases, some people were. I wasn't. I was never there. Somebody will someday say that. I was never there. Yeah, please.
This announcement that you made today, Mr. President, comes on the heels of a January jobs report that smashed industry expectations.
Smashed all records.
And a big feature of that was you reprivatizing the economy, an economy that was bloated with federal employment under the previous president. What's your message to Americans following this jobs report that smashed industry expectations? Is this just a sign that the best is yet to come?
Thank you. The jobs report's amazing in certain ways because we have tremendously fewer federal employees, way down. And now I could have left them and added to what we did, and we would have had almost 100% employment. I could have gotten a great kick out of the fact that we're 100% employed, but we got rid of tremendous numbers of federal workers, and they hated me for it. Now they love me because most of them have gotten jobs in the private sector for 2 and 3 times more money than they were being paid by the federal government. We had some jobs where you had 10 workers for one job, 10 workers for a job that one person should be doing. And we've gotten rid of a lot of those jobs. And by getting rid of them, these people became available to work in the private sector. And as you know, the numbers are incredible. So the job numbers are incredible. The financial numbers are beyond belief. Again, they thought it couldn't be done in 4 years, and I did it in 1 year. And the numbers you're going to see is these I don't know if you notice also construction numbers, the jobs for construction workers. You know why? Because they're building plants all over the United States. That's why. And when these plants open in a year from now, some sooner, some a little bit later, but when these auto plants, AI plants, and thousands of other types of plants, when they open over the next period of a year, year and a half, you're going to see numbers like we've never seen before in this country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
specifically had a personal, powerful interaction with impacted survivors, and that had a major impact on me. And it was important that I had that conversation. And for me as an elected public official, being able to hear directly from those who are suffering loss, pain, and hearing in their own words what happened, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and knowing that I can do something about it, given my official role that I have the honor and privilege of having, has always in my public service career had the most impact on me. So I understand the frustration. We're not starting from scratch, and we will move thoroughly, comprehensively, expeditiously to get answers.
Thank you. Next question comes from Laura. You are now unmuted.
Hi, Attorney General Bonta, Laura Fitzgerald with CAP Radio. Thank you very much for taking the time. This is extremely helpful. I actually have a question for you about the online portal that you launched in December for citizens to be able to report excessive force or other misconduct by ICE agents. Are you able to give an update on how many complaints your office has received since it was launched and where those stand?
Thank you for the question. And I realize there was a second part of the prior question I just want to touch on about the impact that the timing of our investigation will have on our investigation. I think that it won't have an impact. I think, with the fire just over a year ago, with the work that we've already done, with information, evidence that's already been preserved as continues to be available, we'll be able to do the full, thorough, comprehensive investigation that's necessary here. So my apologies for not answering that in my prior response. With respect to the portal, I think you're talking about oag.ca.gov/report misconduct. We announced that to the people of California. As you mentioned a few weeks back, our hope and intent was to get input and participation from members of our broad, robust California community should they see conduct by federal officials, agents, that they might believe is unlawful, and whether it be National Guards people or members of the Marines, potentially violating the Posse Comitatus Act by engaging in civilian law enforcement, which is against the law, or potentially federal immigration enforcement agents who are engaged in activities that violate the civil rights. For example, the Fourth Amendment of Californians, the Fourth Amendment rights of Californians by engaging in unlawful searches or seizures or direct detentions or stops, or maybe even being in violation of state criminal laws. Our hope and intent was to have the participation of Californians who are eyes and ears on the ground, potentially victims themselves or witnesses to this type of misconduct, and to have it sent to us so that we can review what we receive and make assessments around legality or potential illegality. And so we've had the portal open. I will say we don't comment on pending or potential investigations. I will also say that our portal is well utilized. I don't have any aggregate data to provide to you at this moment. And the portal is a investigative portal, meaning we're seeking information that could lead to potential investigation. So that because it's has information that could lead to investigations, it's sensitive, and we typically don't provide a lot of additional comment on that type of information. But we do want to know it exists so that people know it's there should they decide that they want to use it to provide information to us, and it has been used.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Maya. You are now unmuted.
Hi there, it's Maya Spoto from Bloomberg Law. I wanted to ask you about the legal theory underpinning the investigation. I understand you all are pursuing a disparate impact theory. That's also one that the Trump administration has directed the U.S. Justice Department to stop using to enforce civil rights laws. Could you speak for a minute about the significance of that theory?
Sure. I mean, it's a well-established long-standing anti-discrimination theory. And regardless of what the Trump administration says or does about the law, the final say of what the law is the law, not Trump's gloss or his misinterpretation of it or his politicized interpretation of it. If a disparate impact claim is available to an individual or to in our case, a public entity, then it's available. And the president cannot unilaterally take it away. And so it's unfortunate that a key legal tool that is a core and fundamental component of the anti-discrimination law that's been created in the United States of America to tackle discrimination, whether it be based on race or on other factors, that this administration is removing that from the tools in the toolbox to tackle and address discrimination. It's sort of par for the course for them. It's the most anti-civil rights department in the history of the United States at the US DOJ. They're not protecting people's civil rights. And sometimes they're actively attacking and assaulting and undermining people's civil rights. So there's no surprise that this federal administration is playing politics and taking absurd positions about what the law provides for. But our sweet spot, what we do is the facts in the law. The law states that disparate impact theories are available under certain circumstances. And when they are a perfectly appropriate tool to be pursued given the law and when the facts present themselves. So disparate impact is to be understood in comparison to intentional discrimination. So when there's a specific intent to discriminate in someone's head, that's one way you can prove discrimination. Another way to prove discrimination is when there is a disparate impact on a community based on a certain factor that is protected under the law, race being one of them, age being another, disability being another. And those are the three areas that we're looking at here. So I'm well aware of the position of the federal government on the issue of disparate impact claims. We are well aware of what the law provides for under state law. This is a state law claim, a state law-based investigation based on state law being brought by a state law enforcement agency. So whatever Trump's position is on disparate impact does not impact our investigation here.
Thank you. Next question comes from Jill. You are now unmuted.
Hi, Attorney General Bonta. Thanks so much. I am wondering if you can talk a little bit about this investigation in the context of wildfires more generally. Has your office, to your knowledge, ever sort of undertaken a similar civil rights investigation into the response to any other of the major wildfires in the state? And then relatedly, and I know you can't talk about the process for the investigation, but can you talk at all about possible outcomes of the investigation? Are we thinking, is it possible that there could be criminal charges? Is it possible that there could be civil penalties? I know that there's a pretty broad universe of outcomes, but hoping you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Broadly speaking, we are in a very new world where we are seeing wildfires and incidents of fire that we've never seen before, where each one seems to be unprecedented. And the next one, all data and evidence suggest, and weren't true, but we have to look at the data and the evidence shows that the next one will be unprecedented. And so when you have unprecedented challenges, natural disasters, wildfires, you need to respond in unprecedented ways. The way things have always been done won't necessarily be the appropriate response. We need to be flexible. We need to be nimble. We need to rise to the occasion, meet the moment as it changes. And so, face the problem to fix the problem. And so we're seeing things we've never seen before. And that, and I want to say that there's a number of different reviews, reports, investigations, some of which are pending here in California with respect to the Altadena fire, and also the Palisades fire at the county level, at the state level. We've seen some final reports. We're awaiting other reports. I think those are all for the good, to look, to review, to evaluate, to assess, to recommend action, prospective action going forward so that we can be better tomorrow than we are today and improve in our responses. And, as is always the goal, to be quick, to be safe, to protect health, to protect property, to protect, of course, lives, most importantly. So all that's to say we're in an unprecedented world, and we have to acknowledge that, we have to face it, and we have to respond to it. And this is, to my knowledge, the first of its kind investigation with respect to a fire response and civil rights laws as it applies to that response here in California. I have not been involved in one as AG, and I'm not aware of one prior to me in the California Department of Justice. And frankly, not sure how many there have been around the country. But the laws apply to multiple sets of facts, and the laws apply here to this set of facts. And that's why we're looking to see, to do a full vetting, uncovering, surfacing of all the relevant facts and material facts here, and see how these anti-discrimination laws apply. And of course, as I mentioned, we're not just doing it because we thought it was an interesting thing to do. There are some disturbing facts that we know about that suggest, and more than suggest, indicate that such an investigation is an appropriate thing to be doing, to look further. But I do want to say that we're seeing a lot of things we've never seen before. And when it comes to wildfires, each one seems to be unprecedented in its own ways. And so responses like this investigation may also be unprecedented, and that would be completely appropriate.
Next question comes from Denise. Reminder just to state your publication. Denise, you are now unmuted. Hi, Denise Poon, Fox News.
Hi.
Hello, Attorney General Bonta. Last week, you announced 7 arrests for hospice fraud. Given the growing concerns about fraudulent billing practices within California's hospice care industry, what specific steps is the California Department of Health and your office taking to identify, investigate, and curb waste and abuse and fraud in hospice billing? And additionally, how are you coordinating with state and federal agencies to ensure that vulnerable patients receive legitimate care and that taxpayer funds are properly protected?
Thanks for your question. We have long, at the California DOJ, tackled fraud. I provided a set of key facts in this regard at a press conference last week, I believe it was, maybe the week before, talking about the billions of dollars in fraud that we have protected, and based on our investigations, based on our diligence, based on the safeguards that we have in place, and the pursuit of transparency and accountability that we've been involved in for years. I think we provided data around for the last decade and the billions of dollars that we've protected. So this is an issue that we have been tackling for years and continue to tackle. And it is about rooting out fraud. Taxpayer dollars are supposed to be used for the taxpayer purpose, for the service, for the program that they're designated for. And unfortunately, there are bad actors who try to improperly enjoy ill-gotten gains where they see billions of dollars flow, like in the very large state of California, where we have robust government services and provide them provide those services to people in need, people who are hungry, people who are unhoused, people who are sick. And so we focus on the bad actors, try to successfully identify who they are, holding them accountable, and protecting those dollars. And we've done that for years in many different spaces and places, corporate fraud, healthcare fraud more broadly, and yes, including hospice fraud. And I did a press conference on specifically all of the important work we've been doing on hospice fraud. One of the important approaches that law enforcement entities and agencies like mine need to pursue is identifying trends and spikes and in different unlawful conduct. And hospice fraud, unfortunately, has been one. And we have taken multiple actions in partnership with the federal government. I might add at times, we have a whole team that teams up with the federal government, works together to root out fraud broadly in the healthcare system when it comes to improper, fraudulent taking of Medicaid and Medicare dollars. And we've focused on hospice care very recently because that's been a trend in fraud that we've seen. And we made an announcement last week. We've made multiple announcements in the weeks, months, and years prior to that around fraud that we've tackled in the hospice space. And I don't think we're done making announcements with respect to the fraud that we're tackling. But the point is, we tackle fraud. We've done it for years. It's part of our bread and butter. We do it well. We've saved billions of dollars. We've saved it broadly in the healthcare space, more broadly than that in other spaces as well, including corporate fraud more generally. And very specifically, we have tackled for years successfully hospice fraud and will continue.
Thank you. Next question comes from Jacob. You are now unmuted.
Hi, this is Jacob with Scripps News. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to speak with us about this. One question following up on an earlier question about this announcement, and then another on News of Day, if I can. Just given the Trump administration's public disapproval of or lack of interest in disparate impact investigations, I'm wondering if you've been in touch at all with federal counterparts about this investigation, and if you're at all concerned about the administration trying to stymie this investigation in any way. And then on News of the Day, as I'm sure you know, just a few minutes ago, the president and EPA administrator announced the rollback of the endangerment finding that undergirds most regulations of greenhouse gases. I know the state had submitted comments to the proposed rule, just wondering now that this has taken effect, your reaction, and if the state might pursue a legal challenge to this move. Thanks.
Sure. So let me answer the first question first about the federal government's position on disparate impact discrimination and whether we are concerned that they might interfere with our investigation. This is a state investigation brought by a state law enforcement agency on issues within our state. It's fully within our jurisdiction, very clearly in an area that we've worked on for years, which is civil rights enforcement. This is what we do. We've done it time and time again in different environments, applied to different places and spaces, and it's fully appropriate for us to do this here under these circumstances. I don't know what the federal government will do. They have done things. They do shocking things that are not surprising. That's kind of their brand. They do unlawful things, like the 57 unlawful things that they've done and that we brought lawsuits on in just over the last year. So might they try to interfere here? Wouldn't put it past them, but don't know. Not their lane, wouldn't be appropriate. They have no right to interfere. This is our space. This is our lane. This is what we do. We're moving under state laws on a theory completely available under state law as the top cop, the chief law enforcement officer for this state on an issue within our state, period, full stop. So, but again, don't know what they'll do, up to them, but they have no right to interfere here. With respect to the endangerment finding, that is also on brand for this federal administration, unfortunately, to be anti-facts, anti-science, anti-health, anti-future of our planet, anti-appropriate climate action, given the facts right in front of your face. It is a put your head in the sand, give away to the fossil fuel industry while vulnerable communities suffer, while health suffers, and while the environment suffers. And so, this is not unexpected. This is what they do. While the federal administration attempts to undo environmental protections that are very clearly backed by science, California is going to do what we do. We will be a bright light and a fact-based, aggressive actor when it comes to tackling climate change. It is a issue that requires a response that is equivalent in scope, scale, and speed to meet the moment. And California, respectfully, has led this nation in the world and will continue, despite what this federal government it does that is backwards and anti-fact and anti-science. And actually, we will lean in more heavily, given the absence of appropriate leadership at the federal level. So we will challenge illegal actions in court, continue fighting to defend public health, uphold environmental justice, and protect our future generations. And we are always prepared to take action and not shy to take action when California is hurt and the law and the facts determine that an illegal action was taken by the federal government. We will hold the federal government accountable in those circumstances. And we have nothing to announce today, but we are eager to act as appropriate here as well.
Thank you. Next question comes from Macy. You are now unmuted.
Hi, Attorney General Macy Jenkins with NBC4 News. Just to follow up, I'm not sure you gave us specifics or as specific as you can give an answer on the possible outcomes, whether it's criminal or civil accountability. If you can speak on that, that would be great. And then my other question is, what is your recommendation to Altadena residents, for instance, the ones with Altadena for Accountability who have been saying for months, hey, we need some kind of investigation? What's your recommendation for those people who want to contribute to the investigation? Will you be holding any public meetings, or will there be a hotline for them to reach out to you to say, hey, I want to tell you my story, or come investigate this piece?
So first off, let me answer the second question first, then I'll answer the first question second. But thank you for repeating that question. I did miss that before. It was unintentional, and I apologize, and I'll answer it here. Altadenans for Accountability, that's what I was talking about when I was sharing that I'm grateful to surviving families and loved ones who have come forward, who've raised their voices, who in the middle of pain have found the courage and the strength and the resilience to speak up and speak out, share their stories, as painful as they are, and seek answers to their questions. They deserve answers to their questions. And so I've been in touch with them. I've met with them. I've met with them in person. I've heard their stories. They're painful. They're powerful. They're compelling. And that is in large part why we are here today. Because, as I mentioned before, hearing stories from individuals who have been hurt, who are suffering, and knowing that I can do something about it, given my role, has always been the most powerful call to action for me. That's just the way I think and the way I operate and the way my heart works and my values work. So what do I say to them? We're investigating, and we're going to do everything in our power to get the answers that you deserve, that you've been waiting for too long. And we will get the answers. We will look. We will look diligently and thoroughly and comprehensively and provide answers. Our focus here to the issue of sort of remedies or what actions we might take, this is a civil investigation at this time. We are looking into civil rights, potential civil rights violations that essentially could have happened if there are any, and we haven't predetermined that, that happened at a sort of systems and structures level. Where our main focus is to make sure that whatever that what happened here won't ever happen again, and we are looking through the lens of a civil rights investigation into systems and structures that contributed to a delay in LA County's evacuation notice and possible other disparities in emergency response in West Altadena. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves on potential remedies, but I do want to emphasize this is a civil investigation. We are looking at systems and structures, and besides that, we'll need to get into the investigation a little further, look at the facts to see where we might end up.
Thank you.
Next question.